love bugs, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about the Atlas paradox. I know that since the Atlas 6 video, if you've seen it, which you should if you haven't, just to catch up for this one, you might be asking yourself, Natalie, why would you read this book if you didn't like the first one so much? And you know, it's a funny story. I was thinking about that video because it kept getting more, all of a sudden started getting more comments and more engagement. I was like, I wonder why that is. Then I realized that the sequel was coming out, and the day that I Googled the sequel, typed it into my little Google search, was actually the day that it came out, was the release date. So it felt like fate, you know, it felt like somebody upstairs was asking me to read this book, was telling me that I had to read this book and review it. So it was cosmic destiny, actually, that I read this book. And I'm so glad for that. So the premise of the Atlas 6 is that 6 people with magic powers from all around the world are brought together by this guy named Atlas as the initiates to be a part of the Alexandrian Society, which is a secret society of magic users all around the world, and they still have access to and are the keepers of the Library of Alexandria. It's super elite, it's super exclusive. So there are 6 of them, and we're told that only 5 of them can actually become members at the end of the initiation period. So it's very clear to me, and I think to everybody other than the characters, that this means they're gonna have to kill one of the initiates. I don't know why every single character acts surprised whenever they hear this. And what's really frustrating, sorry, I didn't mean to go off here. What's really frustrating is that they all find out about this at different times. We get individually them being surprised that they have to kill one of the members. And it's just so tiring because it's like, how do you enter an initiation period to a secret elite society and expect that at the end of it, somebody just gets to leave, just gets to walk away, knowing that the secret society exists, knowing where it exists, knowing who is in it? Can we be for real? You think that somebody's just gonna walk away with all that knowledge into the universe? Okay. At the end of the book, the initiates have decided they're gonna kill Callum, but then all of a sudden, Libby gets kidnapped by her boyfriend, who is a time traveler and is the plot twist villain. His name is Ezra. He will be significant in this next book. So that's kind of where we stop off. They don't kill Callum, whoops, and Libby gets kidnapped. So yeah, we're caught up now. Let's start with the Atlas paradox. The Atlas paradox essentially picks up right then, but then we immediately get a time skip a year into the future. So after the initiates have gone through all their initiation, God fucking knows what the initiation is. I have no idea, genuinely no idea what they've been doing for a year. But we're past that now. We've gotten a year into the future. They're about to have their final initiation ceremony. And this is actually my first major issue with the book, is the fact that there is such a large time skip. Because if you remember from my first video, one of my biggest criticisms was that the character relationships were so underdeveloped. We got basically no interaction between the characters except for between Nico and Libby. They interacted a lot, but they also knew each other before they got brought into the Alexandrian Society, so it wasn't a new friendship that was blossoming. It was just they've already known each other for a while. So there wasn't really anything new there. And all the other characters just straight up don't like each other, B, don't talk to each other. And that's just weird, you know, it's just weird. And so because we've had this large time skip, they still don't seem like friends. and it's very frustrating to see how the characters talk about their relationships with other characters when we've never seen that. We have like no proof that this is real. So for example, a lot of the characters throughout the book, but like especially in the beginning, talk about how like ever since Libby got kidnapped, our group dynamic has shifted. We haven't been as close. Like now there's no one to keep us grounded, to hold us together. And it's like, what in the goddamn hell are you talking about? You guys are not friends. She has not changed your group dynamic at all because you didn't have one to begin with. It infuriates me. It infuriates me. Like, what do you mean? They're like, she was our moral compass. Like, she kept us all together. It's like, no, she didn't. You don't know her last name. Like, you do not know this girl. And it's so disingenuous for you to act like you give a shit that she got kidnapped because you don't know her. You would have the same reaction to just like a random ass kid on a milk carton gone missing. You have no stake in the game that Libby has gotten kidnapped. And actually, Callum benefits from it because second major criticism of this book is that all of a sudden, now that there are 5 initiates because Libby's been kidnapped, now they don't have to kill one of the initiates, which I think is so weird. Because, like, okay, I get it. The archives or the Alexandrian Society, whatever, say that there are 6 initiates, only 5 can become members. Now Libby's been kidnapped, so there are only 5 people left. Perfect. But why? Like, why? What is the significance of having to kill one of the members if the act of killing is not necessary? Like, whenever I was reading the first book, I assumed that this was like a ritual sacrifice kind of thing, like a blood sacrifice or a human sacrifice that was necessary in order to join the archives. Like, that is the final initiation, is that you have to kill somebody as a group, you have to come together, and that this act of horrible violence, this act of killing another person, is going to bring you together, the people who are still alive, and is going to like give you a secret that you have to all keep together, which strengthens the bond between you. Like, it made sense to me that the actual action of killing someone, the action of like a ritual sacrifice, is the reason that they require it. But all of a sudden it's a numbers game. All of a sudden it doesn't matter that one of the initiates has to die. Like, they don't even have to die, they just have to disappear. One of them could have just like gone home and like that would have been good. That doesn't make any sense to me. And like, the people assume that Libby is dead, but they have no proof on that. Like, they have no reason to think that she's dead, really. Also, I think it would have been more interesting if even though Libby does get kidnapped, like, the sacrifice is still required. I thought it was something like that. Like, it's a secret society from fucking ancient Greece. Like, it does not surprise me that a human sacrifice is necessary. I thought it was just like something really gross and like primal and creepy, where it's like the archives require a blood sacrifice. They need the blood of like an archivist in order to sustain itself somehow. But I guess that's just like not the case, because all of a sudden the rest of the 5 people are just like there and they don't have to kill Callum anymore. And it's kind of awkward because, or it would be awkward if the characters ever interacted, because the last book Tristan had a knife on Callum and was like getting ready to kill him. And then now what? What happens now? Oops. But it just kind of makes me wonder, like, which side of the equation is important? Like, does it matter that one person dies, or does it matter that the other 5 people enact the killing? Does the person who is dead matter, or do the people who are alive matter? I would think that the people who are alive matter, that the action of committing a ritual sacrifice is significant. But I guess, like, just one of them just has to die. Like, whatever. Ugh. So annoying. Anyway, I hope that made sense. I know I rambled about it for a long time, but it gets me really fired up because I don't get it, and because I wanted to see them commit a really creepy, gross ritual sacrifice. I also think that, like, whenever they have to kill one of them, it shouldn't have just been like Tristan going off on his own and trying to kill Callum. It should have been all 5 of them having to like do it together. I don't know. I just think it would have been kind of fun. Would have made it more like cultish. I just really think that, like, I'm gonna talk about cults later in this video, so I don't want it to seem like I'm obsessed with cults like this early on, but it would have made it seem more culty and would have given the Alexandrian society a more negative, immediately, like a more negative, a more sinister vibe. And I think that would have been helpful later on in the book. But so tying those 2 points together, in the last book, Libby was upset when she realized that they had to kill somebody, not because she had to kill one of her friends, but because she had to commit murder. Like, the fact that she had to kill somebody was upsetting, not the fact that she had to kill somebody who she had become friends with, somebody who she had worked with and studied with. And I think that just shows, like, the lack of development with their relationships, the lack of depth with these character relationships, because Libby did not give a shit that one of her friends was gonna die. She just cared that she had to do a morally wrong act, which is valid. I think that's valid. Like, the not wanting to be a murderer, I would hope we can all relate to that. But in a character-driven book, in a book where there are 6 central characters who impact the plot, and like the plot is developed by the characters, I think that should not be the conflict. Like, the conflict should be the character relationships, not the morality of killing somebody. Anyway, we gotta move on from that because it's already been 12 minutes. I think it would have been really fun to, before the time skip, get like a little snippet, or I don't think the time skip should have happened, but theoretically, like before the time skip or in the beginning of the book, I think it would have been really fun to like see the conversation between Atlas and the other 5 members, not Libby, whenever he tells them that, like, okay, we're good, we don't need the sacrifice anymore, you guys don't have to kill Callum because Libby's gone. I just think that would have been like really funny, because how do you respond to that? You were gonna kill this man two minutes ago. You were gonna kill him, and now you don't even have to. What do you say? What do you say to each other? What words are exchanged after that? My bad. Sorry. So anyway, the book really kicks off with this final initiation ritual. Getting back to the plot now. We're at the final initiation ritual, which is essentially just the like fearscape simulation from Divergent, where they like, she sits in front of the council and they stick her with something and she has to hallucinate through all her fears in front of all of them. That's basically what they do. So what it is that they go to this room, they're with all the other initiates, Dalton and Atlas, and they have to go through this like simulation basically, in which their character talks to one of the other 5 initiates, or one of the other 4 initiates, I guess, because Libby's gone. And so let me just say that I think this went on for way too long. This was like maybe like 15% of the book, like something insane. This went on forever. I thought we were never gonna get out of this initiation ritual. It went on for so long. It wasn't interesting for even a second. And I just like, I wanted it to be done so early on. I wanted it to be done. And then it just kept going for like many chapters. So Nico goes first. He interacts with Reina, and we get this chapter from Reina's perspective. And so as Nico is interacting with Reina, they're like boxing or like sparring. As she's watching him go through his hallucination where he's like fighting with her, she's commenting on the way that he perceives her, and she's reflecting on the way that she feels about being perceived. So she talks about how like she doesn't really care about the way that people view her, but the way that Nico views her in his hallucination bothers her because she thinks that he views her as predictable and weak and just like not really a formidable opponent. And I think that's all good. Like, I liked seeing Reina reflect on her feelings towards being perceived. I don't like that they tried to convince us that Nico and Reina were friends, and like that they spar together often, and that's why Nico perceives that like Nico is watching her in his hallucination. Forget that sentence. We're just gonna move on. Because like this whole time Reina is like, Nico and I hang out every day, like we spar every day, this is how we interact, this is how we build our friendship, we're besties by now basically. And like, we have never seen this. Last book, Reina didn't talk to anybody. Reina just like sat alone the entirety of last book, like did not talk to this man at all. And now they're best friends, they spar every day, and she's upset that he perceives her this way. So like the reaction that Reina has to this initiation ritual is that she gets mad at Nico for perceiving her this way, and so they just don't talk for the rest of the book. So it's so awkward because we're told so early on that they're friends, that this really offends her, this hurts her, and we've never seen proof of this. We don't have any proof that they are friends, and then from this moment on they never interact again basically. Like, and anytime they do interact, she's mad at him, and like their relationship has changed. So we've only seen their friendship break up. That's the only moment in their friendship that we've ever witnessed, is their friendship break up. And Nico isn't even fucking there. Like, Nico is fighting a hallucination of Reina, and Reina's standing on the outside breaking up with him in a friendship way. It just makes no sense. Why would you do that? I think my biggest critique for the initiation rituals is that every single interaction that happens within the initiation ritual, so you have the person who is being initiated and the other member of the group who is like they're interacting with in the hallucination, in the fear landscape. Every single one of these interactions would have been better if it wasn't a simulation, if it was just like a real interaction that they had. Like, if Nico and Reina just actually talked to each other once and she reflected on their friendship and thought about how she feels about being perceived, that would have been a better scene than like what we got. It's so annoying. Oh my god. I don't want to spend too long on the simulations because they were so long in the book and I hated them so much. But so I'm just gonna like speed run them. I think Nico's was the only one that was like really significant because it really like showcases the larger problem with the book, which is the character interactions, the lack of development with character relationships. So I'm just gonna go through the rest of them quickly. Tristan has to talk to Libby in his simulation, which is fun because remember, Libby's kidnapped. He has to talk to Libby in his simulation because he still feels guilty about her getting kidnapped. It's definitely not his fault, but I do like it when he is self-deprecating. I know that's a weird thing to say. I know it sounds mean, but I also don't like Tristan. So whenever he's being mean to himself and whenever he's talking about how much he hates himself, I'm kind of like, yeah. And then at the end of Tristan's, I don't know what to call these, his hallucination where he sees Libby, he's talking to Libby. At the end of it, it gets kind of weird because he's done, but the projection of Libby is still there. She's still like trying to interact with him, even though he's out, he's done. So I thought what was gonna happen is that like Libby has not actually died, and so like this projection of her is actually the initiation test trying to lock onto Libby, trying to find her consciousness so that she can go next and like she can do the initiation ritual. But I'm not sure if that's what happened because this actually doesn't get brought up again. So it's just like a weird moment that I really thought was going to be significant, and it did not pay off. Setup, no payoff. What's next? Reina argues with Parisa and then stabs her. I think it would have been more interesting if they kissed, and I'm being so dead ass. Like, Reina not liking Parisa is just so boring. And like there's no substance there. It would have been so much more interesting if that like dislike manifested in a smooch. And look, I'm gonna complain about Parisa being over sexualized later, but right now I think it would have been cool if the girls kissed. It would have just been a more nuanced way to approach Reina's feelings about Parisa, and because there's this like thing where Parisa is perceived, well, she's like hyper aware of how she's perceived, where Reina really doesn't care how she's perceived. And like Parisa's super confident, Reina's really not. And so like they just kind of butt heads a lot, and I think that manifesting in Reina being violent towards Parisa is just so boring. It's like the most boring way this interaction could have ended. I forgot who Parisa talks to because I didn't write it down. Probably Tristan. I don't give like a single shit about Tristan, so I usually didn't take notes over him. Callum was a fun one, actually. Callum, this is a slay. This was actually like such a slay, because the only rules that we know to the initiation ritual are that they go into the hallucination thing and they have to interact with one of the other initiates. And so Callum interacts with himself. It's so fun. It's such a good way to subvert that. Unfortunately, as soon as Callum starts talking, that kind of falls apart for me, because like I was so caught up in like, wow, it is so fun and interesting that Callum has to talk to himself, that then I kind of forgot that Callum sucks. And so then there were two Callums speaking to each other, and it was the worst. It was so annoying. Callum is very like 2012 emo Tumblr boy. Like he would have been so hot on Tumblr. He would have been a Tumblr sexy man for sure. But in the year of our Lord 2022, he's just annoying. Like he's just annoying. He's a very Holden Caulfield, like edgelord, trying to be more deep than things actually are. He's so pretentious, so annoying, and like not even like, he doesn't even have anything interesting to say, so he'll be like philosophizing about the world and he's got nothing original to say. So it's like, just shut the fuck up, maybe. Okay, so my notes say we learned some fun things about him, but it was honestly overshadowed by how annoying he is. I like the way he talked about how he feels he can't develop real relationships with people because okay, hang on. I like the way he talks about how he feels like he can't develop real relationships with people because they'll always think he used his magic to emotionally manipulate them. So a recap for Callum is that his power is over emotions. He can influence and manipulate people's emotions. And so in this, like, I'm gonna call it a monologue, he's talking to like a projected version of himself. They're going back and forth. So it's him and a fake version of him, but I'm gonna call it a monologue anyway. He's monologuing about how he feels like he can't have a real depth to his relationships because the other person is always going to feel like he's manipulating them. Like if he says something about how like if he ever falls in love with someone, that other person might believe that he put those feelings of love into them, that it's not real. And I think that's really good. I think it's a really interesting way to talk about like the effect of his magic on him. He also talks about how he feels a lot of emotional burden because he's feeling everybody else's emotions in addition to his own all the time. So he's always feeling whenever people are happy, whenever they're sad, whenever they're angry, he can always feel that. And that's a lot of added burden to him. So yeah, if this conversation happened in any other method, would have been good. I think this should have been like a gradual emotional journey for him, like a kind of like a character arc. You know how sometimes characters go through arcs over the course of a book? That was really mean. I'm sorry. I think it would have been a great character arc for him to realize this about himself and kind of come to terms with the fact that, you know, maybe he does develop a real relationship over the course of this book and he has to wrestle with feeling like he's never really gonna feel a real relationship, but then he does. That would have been a really interesting character arc if those existed in this series. The voice actor, I was listening to the audiobook, did a great job of capturing the vibes of this scene. It was very like JD from Heathers, played by a 16-year-old in high school, and like, you know, all the lines have been rewritten to get rid of all the curse words and violence. That's exactly the vibe he brought to it. He did a fantastic job capturing the spirit of this scene, and I mean that as an insult. Yeah, my biggest gripe with the simulations is that I don't think they needed to be simulations. All the character development that we got from the simulations would have been better, would have been more authentic, would have been more interesting, would have been more effective if we had gotten that character development from actual interactions between the characters. But God forbid the characters ever talk to each other, so I guess that's just not an option. A funny note that I can't fit anywhere else is that at some point, Parisa, I wrote Reina in my notes, but it's Parisa, makes a comment about how she was an art model before she came to the Alexandrian Society or something like that. And if we remember from last book, Parisa's only defining character trait is that she's hot. Like, that's it. That's all we know about her. So this is actually like one of the first details we get about her life before the Alexandrian Society, like who she is. And she's not an art model because she's like a connoisseur of the arts. She's not an art model because she's into art. She's an art model because she was like sharing her hot body with the art students, like paying it forward to the art students, giving them a hot art model. And it's like, that's not what an art model is for, first of all. Like, okay, in all like basic drawing classes, you usually have to do figure drawings with art models, and they are naked, but it's like not fun, you know, it's not a good time, because what they do is the art model gets there, they're naked, they stand in a pose for a minute, sometimes like 3 minutes, and then they switch, and you have to draw that pose in a very short amount of time. And it's like, it's stressful, it's not fun, and you're like at these weird angles all of the time. Usually the art models are creepy old men. So like, yeah, thank you to Reina for coming to the art school and giving the poor artists a hot model. I'm sure that, I guarantee you that none of them even like looked twice at her. They were just worried about like coloring her, the shading of her art. Like, it's just like not a job that requires you to be hot. It really truly is not. And I think it would have been more interesting if Reina was like the painter, not the art model, you know, like if Reina was actually a really talented artist, or like a really skilled artist. She had been developing this for years, and like it was her pride and joy. If she had any character traits that weren't directly tied to her body, to the way that she looks, to how attractive she is, that would just be great, because I think that it is worth noting that Reina is the only brown woman in this book, and that her only character traits stem from her physical worth, like her physical attractiveness, that the only way she finds worth, really the only way she interacts with other people, is through her physical body, how she looks, how attractive she is. And I think that is like kind of harmful and just like so annoying, because we don't know anything about this girl other than the fact that she's really pretty. And like, that's not much. That's not a lot to know about a person. I would say that's not anything to know about a person. So the fact that like this is the first we've seen into her life outside of the Alexandrian Society, and she talks about how like it was her using her beauty for like the betterment of society, is very much like something a non-artist would say about art models, is that like the beautiful person is the art model, and all the artists are like lusting after them as they're drawing. But it's just not how it is. Like, if you've ever done figure drawings, I think you can probably see where I'm coming from, is that like whenever you see a reference, you don't even really see a person. Like, you don't even really see body parts. You just see like shapes and color and value, and like that's it. Especially if you're doing graphite drawing, because then you don't even have to worry about color. You just see shape and value. That's it. Like, that's all you see. It's barely a person to you. It's just a bunch of shapes that you have to draw in 1 minute for a grade. That's it. Like, oh my god. All of our characters have been initiated into the Alexandrian Society. They are all members now for some fucking reason. I don't know why the initiation period is a year long if they don't have to do anything rigorous like during that time. They're not weeding anybody out because they are all like accepted because Libby's gone. I feel like the year time frame would have been a good, I think it would have been better if we got to see them throughout that year, getting closer, like building relationships with each other, and then at the end of the year they have to ritually sacrifice somebody. I think that would have been so fun. It would have had so much tension, so much drama if all of a sudden they were like, yeah, I know that. I think they should have lied. I think they should have said that they were all going to be initiates, let them get really close, and then at the end be like, just kidding, you have to kill one of these people. And now they're friends, and now they're besties. Maybe some of them are romantic with each other, and now they have to kill one of them. I think that would have been fun. Something I really do like about this book is that now that they are initiates, they have to decide on a research topic, which is so exciting. I was so excited whenever they said this because I think that for all my gripes, Olivia Blake does really have some interesting ideas, some interesting concepts that I would have really liked to see explored through like the lens of it being a research topic that her characters are going through. And so like I was really excited about this. I thought it was going to be so much fun, and for the most part I think a lot of it was fun, but I am going to have some issues that I'm going to talk about. They're all deciding on their research topics. Reina decides she wants to research evolution, and which is fitting because she's like, her power is over plant life, so she can like make plants grow, she can talk to plants. Evolution is a pretty natural thing for her to study, but there's this comment in her narration about how like Nico was disappointed that Reina didn't want to study dark matter. Name a fucking world where Reina wants to study dark matter. Nico is a physicist. He can study dark matter. Reina doesn't have the education to study dark matter. Like, Reina doesn't have the background to study dark matter. Reina doesn't know what dark matter is. Reina doesn't know anything about dark matter. Why the fuck would she want to study dark matter instead of evolution, which she knows all about because she's like, she has a background in it and she has an interest in it because she has power over plants. But that does bring me to my next topic, which is another major issue that I have with the book, which is that I don't think any of these characters are actually qualified to do the research that they are doing. I'm gonna start with Nico and Reina because I think their topics are the most well defined, and I'm already on the topic of them, so we'll stick with them for now. Nico has an undergraduate degree in physics, and this is all we really know about his degree. We don't know if he had a concentration or a specialty, or if he did any research projects or internships that give him more experience. We just know that he has an undergraduate degree in physics from his magic university. So it's like, from what I understand, like barely even real physics. It's just magic physics, which may or may not be different than real physics. But what I'm trying to say is that I don't think there is a field in the universe. I don't think there is any academic field in which an undergraduate degree alone is sufficient to lead independent research with no supervision over a topic that is as specialized and as theoretical as dark matter. Also, I don't know if he has any lab equipment. They're in just like this random like house. They're not even in like a school. The initiates are all just like in a house. I don't know how big this house is. I don't know if they have like a chemistry lab. Is he doing experiments, or is he just like sitting at his desk thinking all day? how is he, because, okay, so, wait, let me find my notes, oh my god. But, like, he's got no professor, no grad student, no PhD candidate to oversee his research, no academic board, no board of science, and it's, like, something as specific as theorizing the existence and qualities of dark matter in its applied magical uses concerning time travel. That's what his research project is about. And he doesn't, like, it's just one guy. What's he gonna do? Just sit at his desk and think about it? Is that really it? And, like, he doesn't have any equipment. If he does have equipment, how dangerous are his experiments? Because last book, he built a wormhole in the house and then just jumped into it. Like, no prior testing, nothing. Just jumped his stupid body into a wormhole that he just made, and which never got explained how he made it. Just jumped into it. Is this the person we want researching dark matter by his lonesome with no help, no supervision, no board of ethics, no like university to help him out, like truly nothing, just him and the library? Also, I think apparently they didn't even close the wormhole, because at some point in the book they mentioned that, like, there just is a wormhole in the kitchen. You just left it there? And so Reina is requesting and reading books about the evolution of human civilization, which I think her research project sounds a little bit more like anthropology than evolution to me. But, like, the evolution of civilization, I get it. It's a stretch, but, like, I'm not worried about it. So she gets a bunch of books from the archives about the ancient world, including Rome, Greece, Egypt, the Old Testament, China, and Samaria. And my question is, how the fuck is she reading any of this? Because does she read Latin? Does she read Greek? Does she read hieroglyphs? Can she read Chinese? Can she read Sumerian? Can she read Hebrew? Can she read any of the languages in any of the books that she's gotten? Because I actually did my research project in undergrad about ancient civilization, and whenever you get to a certain level of research about ancient civilization, you need to be reading it in the original language. And so, like, most people who have degrees in ancient civilization will first of all have a specialized degree, so like a degree in Egyptology, a degree in ancient Hebrew texts, whatever, and they'll read in that language. They'll be able to read the original documents, because anytime there's a translation, you're putting a lot of faith into the translator to A, be correct, and B, really capture what the text is about. Anybody who speaks multiple languages can tell you that there are differences between languages that aren't so easy to put into words. Like, there's a lot of cultural context and historical context that goes into certain documents, and that goes into just like language in general. And that's not going to really work in translation. So it's very necessary to read in the original language and to understand the cultural context and the historical context around that document. My example is the word hubris, which is an ancient Greek word referring to the breaking of hierarchy dictated by tradition and culture. But in English, it's often simplified to just pride. So it's not a one-to-one translation, and not recognizing that is going to influence how you interpret and how you understand an ancient Greek text that mentions this word. And then you have to understand that there are thousands of words like this between like all the documents that she got, because she got documents in like 5 cultures. And if she doesn't really understand those cultures, if she doesn't really know the history and the context behind it, she's not going to be able to understand it. And I don't think it makes sense for the Library of Alexandria to have translations of documents, because like if you are doing research on that document, you probably will be reading it in the original language. But on the off chance that the Library of Alexandria does keep translation, are those translations in English or are they in Japanese? Because Reina is Japanese. And if she's reading something in English, then that's 2 degrees of translation for meaning to get lost between. So it's just like, how is she reading this? She doesn't, I don't think she went to college. I don't think we know much about her like university life. It's wild to me that that detail is just kind of overshadowed when like that's what she could have been doing for the year of initiation. She could have been learning these languages and researching the historical context. And like a year is not that much time to learn this many languages. But if that's all you gotta do in a day, then it's probably fine. Like, I mean, she's not working a 9 to 5 and being initiated into the secret society for the elite. She's just like living in this house with the plants and with these other people that she doesn't fucking like. So she can dedicate like 12 hours a day to learning new languages and learning history. And like she's chilling. So that's what she could have been doing this whole year. And that would have been a very easy way to explain how she's able to read and understand all these documents. But God forbid. And I know that sounds nitpicky, but this is essentially a dark academia book, so I'm gonna critique the academia elements to it. There aren't that many academia elements to this book, so I'm gonna talk about them when they show up. Tristan's powers are getting developed, which is fun. He figures out that he can see magic physically whenever he's under a lot of stress, especially when he has a massive adrenaline rush because he's about to die. That's like the main situation where he's able to utilize that power, and he's able to see time, he's able to see magic. They kind of refer to it as being able to see in like higher dimensions or like a different dimension. I don't know if that's actually what it is, but that's kind of what the book alludes to it being. But the catch is that he's only able to tap into that whenever he's about to die, whenever he thinks he's about to die. So he goes to Nico and knock, 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 says, "Hi, Nico, will you please try to kill me so that I can tap into this magic and we can learn about it?" Nico obviously says no. And then Tristan just like trauma dumps onto him like immediately. No hesitation, just like it's so funny actually. This is so cringe, but I'm gonna set the scene for you. Knock, knock, knock. "Hi, Nico, I need you to kill me." "No, my dad never loved me." I don't know why he felt the need to just dump all that on Nico, his like childhood trauma and daddy issues. It didn't really seem like that effective, and I don't want to sound mean, but it would have made me pretty uncomfortable if this guy that like, because Tristan says he like straight up does not like Nico, so like if this guy that I like don't know, don't like, have never talked to in my life was just all of a sudden telling me all this stuff about himself in an effort to make me do something for him, I don't think that would fly. But actually, it actually does work. So more accurately, the scene goes like this. "Please kill me." "No. My dad never loved me." But yeah, I actually really do like this development for Tristan, and I like that he is, I like that their powers are kind of coming together, him and Nico, because it kind of gives a sense of unity to the book, gives it a sense of direction, because Nico's whole thing is like time travel. He wants to learn how to time travel, and then Tristan is like, I can see time. Could be significant. So yeah, hopefully something comes from that eventually. Tristan and Nico are not my favorite duo from this book. There are 3 duos in this book. There is Tristan and Nico, Parisa and Dalton, and my favorite duo. But let me talk about Parisa and Dalton real fast because they're so fucking boring. I don't want to spend another, I need to get them out of my mind so that I don't have to think about them again later. They're so boring, I'm sick of it. Anyway, get right to it, quick and easy. Dalton is researching Genesis, so fun, so cool, we don't give a shit. Parisa is researching like the effect of mental illness on telepaths, which is fun, you know, great, good for her. It doesn't feel relevant to anything else going on in the story, and like maybe it will be eventually. Parisa is a telepath, Atlas is a telepath, and I think it's kind of vaguely connected to Gideon. Nico's friend is like, I don't really know what to call him, but he can come into people's dreams and like do dream magic, and they're described the same way. So Gideon's magic is explained as being part of the collective unconscious. So whenever he goes into somebody's dreams, he's actually just accessing the collective human subconscious. He's getting into like the human experience, and that's kind of what Parisa's power is also explained as being, is like her ability to tap into the collective unconscious. But I just like can't bring myself to care about Parisa and Dalton. I'm so sorry, they're so boring. It's so like it's so boring. They just flirt, and it's like, good for you, Parisa, but can we do something else? Can we do anything else? Because Dalton is a slice of white bread. Like, he's so boring. And it's also like, is this all Parisa is here to do? Is she only here to be the like hot girl character? Because like, I'm happy for her, I'm glad she's pretty, but is there a little bit more substance? Like, do we have a little bit more to go off of? And like, I know I'm supposed to support her because she's a hot girl boss, but like, holy shit. I think that Atlas even at some point says like there's plenty of research about depression in telepaths. It's like, why didn't somebody tell her that before she picked it as her research project? Why didn't she know that before she started doing the research? Did she not look at what other people had already researched? Like, did she not check that the research paper didn't already exist? Oh my god. Anyway, my favorite duo in the book is Callum and Reina. I talked so much shit about Callum last video, but I was really vibing with him this book. Honestly, I really was. He sucked really bad last book, but I vibed with him this book. He spends almost the entirety of this book just like blackout drunk, half asleep, depressed, self-deprecating, and I think it's a good look for him. I think it really works. He makes it work. I support mental health awareness. I really do, and I'm aware of his mental health, because he's just like, whenever he actually talks, he's so annoying, but whenever he's just there like kind of making self-deprecating jokes and like chatting up Reina, it's fun. You know, like, he's just there for a good time. He's barely there, but I don't know, it's kind of fun. I like it. And it's especially fun because Reina is going off the deep end. She's doing her research, and she's come to the conclusion that she is a god, and it's so silly. It's so fun. It's like, I love it. I love this. Really, I really did like Reina's research throughout this book, especially in the beginning, because we kind of forget about it by the end of the book. But which actually brings me to another issue that I have with the book, is that so many fun ideas are brought up and then dropped. So like, this idea of Reina being a god is so fun, is so interesting. I love it. But then like, Callum kind of makes fun of her for it, and she kind of changes her stance. Instead of being like, I am a god, I am a higher being, like, I am a celestial being, she starts saying like, no, gods are just magicians. Gods are not actually higher beings. They're just like creatures who kind of guide humanity, who are there whenever humanity is at a turning point, and whenever they need a little extra help, religion comes in and helps humanity keep it going. And it's like, no, form a cult. I I cannot tell you how serious I am. I am being so dead serious. I think she should form a cult. I think it should be very like Cult of Dionysus, like people are just like going crazy at all hours of the day. Callum should come. He can kind of, he can be a leader. Well, I don't think he would want to do that. He can be in the corner drinking your wine that you make from your grape. But like it could be so fun. If she just suddenly was like, I think I'm gonna form a cult, I think he would go with her. If like, and it wouldn't take much effort to just like pick him up and bring it. Like he's out most of the book, so it wouldn't be too hard. I think it would be so fun, so interesting, and I would love to see her just kind of go off the deep end even further, an even deeper end. Callum at some point says there's no scientific limit to his power. He can just like keep using it, use more and more of it until he like explodes or dies or something, which I personally would call a scientific limit. If like he got to the point that his magic killed him, I would call that a limit, but whatever. I do like the concept that he can just like overdo it. Like it is possible that he just goes too far. Yeah, I think it just goes back to the fact that I think self-destruction is really fun on his character, and I like it when he's self-deprecating. I don't know, it's a lot more fun than how pretentious he is, how self-righteous he is in the like monologue scene. Just like this is a different side of him. This is like he's just had all his secrets exposed in the monologue scene where he talked about how he like secretly hates himself, and now he's just kind of like drinking a lot. And it's such a 180, but I love it. And at this point in the book, I really am vibing. I really did like a lot of what we were putting down here, and I was excited to see how it manifested later in the book. We'll see. But the research kind of gets lost in the book. Like Reina is doing her thing and Nico and Tristan are doing their thing, but we kind of lose sight of like the overarching reason. Like I don't know, Reina tells us a couple of things and like that's it. I don't know, I think this book definitely could have been longer and like really gone into depth about their research. I would have really liked that. I thought this book was like minimum 600 pages when I was listening to the audiobook, because it just felt like it was so much was getting established, so much was being set up, and also the audiobook was like 18 hours, but it's only 400 pages. And this is a lot. Like this is a lot of work to do in 400 pages. This is a lot, really. I think it should have been longer and it should have been more focused. But anyway, yeah, we've been away from Libby for a while, so let's circle it back to her. We've got many perspectives in the book. Every so often we go to Ezra, and every so often we go to Libby. I'm just gonna hit Ezra real fast and then go back to Libby. Ezra is like, oh man, just kidnapped my girlfriend, and like now things are kind of falling apart. He's got this rival organization called the Forum, which is opposed to the Alexandrian Society. And here's the thing, is that like they have this ground of being like, we're better than the Alexandrian Society, and it's like, what's the difference? You've got a secret society of academics, because like they're all like professors and shit. You've got magic, and you all suck. What is the difference? You've got a pretentious name. The Forum is only like 1 degree less pretentious than the Alexandrian Society. Like, let's be real. Anyway, Ezra's on my nerves. But yeah, he's meeting up with all these people. One of them is a professor who will be significant later. And yeah, he's in the present. Oh, actually, I haven't talked about that yet. Let's talk about it now. Libby, when she is kidnapped, wakes up in this like apartment, and pretty swiftly escapes. She like tries to figure out where she is, and she discovers that she is in the year 1989. And I think that's great. I love this like little twist in there, because Ezra is a time traveler. Obviously, like the easiest thing, or like the most secure thing for him to do, would be to take Libby to a different time period so that she like literally cannot get back to her friends, to the Alexandrian Society. It's a very simple twist, but I think it is so necessary. She makes for this university in New York, and it's a magic university, and she tells them like, hey, I'm Libby. I went to the other university, the other magic university, for physics, and I'm a physicist, and here's my magic. And they just like accept her in, but like not as, she doesn't have a job, she's not a student, but she is there every day. I don't know what she's doing. I don't know what. They didn't ask for like her ID. They didn't ask for her academic records. They didn't ask for proof of anything that she said, because she doesn't have it. So if even one person was like, do you have a driver's license? Do you have any form of ID that we can see? This whole thing would just fall apart, but it doesn't. So again, Libby has no job. She's not a student. She's not a TA. She truly has no place in this university, and it could fall apart like that if anybody bothered doing any fact checking. But the book kind of explains this as like, she's so good at magic that like she impressed them so much that they didn't even check anything. But it doesn't tell us what she did to earn that distinguishment. I don't know. And something that the book does pretty often is that it tells us that Libby and Nico are the two greatest physicists in the world. How so? How so? Because again, they both have undergraduate degrees in physics, no research, no internship, no job. In what reality is that enough to be the best in the world at anything, at any field in like academics? Because I get it if they have the most potential of anybody in the world, if they have like, they're the most promising of the student class that they graduated with, but to say that they are the best in the world when they have like nothing to show for it is so annoying. Libby, while she's at this university, meets this girl named Belend, and Belend is there visiting from, or she's like on a student visa from another country. I don't remember which one. I think India. And so Belend's big thing is that she wants to make the world more equitable, wants to spread like find concrete and helpful uses for magic, to bring clean energy around the world, to make the world a better place. And Libby kind of strings her along with this, like affirms her desires and like encourages her, and their desires, it's kind of a weird word for it, but their aspirations maybe kind of line up, because Libby is trying to get back to the present, and in order to do so, she knows she needs a really large energy source, and Belend also needs a large energy source because she's trying to make, you know, a green, good energy, clean energy for the world. And this is so fucked up in like retrospect. We get this all from Libby's perspective, so I think that kind of dulls how messed up this is. Libby kind of like tells Belend that there's a research project she's doing, that like that's why she's at the university, and that once they find this energy source, they'll be able to make Belend's hopes and dreams a reality. They'll be able to bring energy to the entire world in a clean and ethical way. And it's just like not true. Like, it's not what Libby wants at all. And Libby knows, because Libby is from the future, she knows that this isn't gonna happen. Like, she knows that climate change is still gonna be around. She knows that lots of third world countries are still not gonna have access to clean energy, all these things. And so Libby like somehow finds funding for them to go to one of these like natural sources of energy so they can look at it, they can see if they can use it, and somehow like gets the school to fund this. I don't really know how, but she does. And at this point, like, Libby has also been, there's also a time skip for Libby, so it's 1990 now. She's been there for a year. She's been researching for a year. She's been besties with Belinda for a year. And yeah, so they have like a pretty close relationship by now. They get a little closer than friends when they're on their trip. And, you know, that's great. Happy for Libby. But it is so messed up what she's doing to this girl. So when they're there, concurrently in the present, Nico and Tristan are talking about ways to get Libby back to the present because they've figured out that she's in the past thanks to Gideon, who again is the one who can like enter people's dreams and see people's dreams, do magic in the dream world. And that's explained because of the collective unconscious, I already said, but Gideon is able to talk to Libby in Libby's dreams because within the collective unconscious there is no time. It's not a physical dimension wherever like time affects things. It exists kind of outside that plane of reality. I like that. I think it works. I appreciate whenever we get like any sort of explanation as to how things work because we get it so infrequently in the series. So like the fact that this is explained in a logical way, I appreciate that. I think it makes sense that, like, you know, the human experience is not something that is defined by time on that level. Like consciousness is not defined by time, and so it exists in a place outside of time. I like that. I like it. So they find out she's in 1990. They're doing all this research to figure out like how to get her back somehow or another. The physics starts to get real confusing. Like, so much just like pseudoscience and like fake science in this, like in the end of this book. They were doing like pretty well throughout the beginning and the middle, I think, but once we get to getting Libby from the past to the present, it just kind of all goes out the window. They start talking about so many different things that it's just like not really clear what direction they're going in. Anyway, so Tristan is like, if we had a large source of energy, then we could bring Libby to the future. And they like calculate how much energy they need, and Nico is like, okay, so like an atom bomb, that's the equivalent. It's just like a nuclear bomb. That's what we need. And so they're obviously like, okay, Libby's not gonna go for that. Sad day. She's stuck in the past. We'll never get her back because in order to get her back, she needs to detonate a nuclear weapon. And she's probably not gonna do that because if we remember from last book, she didn't even want to kill Callum, and Callum deserved it. So she's definitely not going to want to detonate a nuclear bomb, which will undoubtedly kill people, more than one. And then Tristan, like, this is so annoying. Tristan like finds that there, or maybe it's Nico, I think it's Tristan though, finds that there was a nuclear weapon level of energy emitted at some point in 1990, and that like that was probably Libby. Like, he's like, oh well, if we look at this remote location, it looks like they did have an explosion to that caliber, and people just didn't talk about it because nobody was killed in the initial explosion. And I was like, no way they could just set off a nuke and nobody gets hurt. And then he said it was in Nevada, and I was like, oh, never mind. They talk about like a pure fusion weapon, and you know, that kind of came here. So here, you notice what I just said is a pure fusion weapon. Why does it have to be a weapon? That came out of nowhere, and it wasn't really explained anywhere else in the text. It's like, why does it have to be a weapon that she's using? Why can't it just be like a device? because like there are particle accelerators that aren't part of like weaponry. Like science exists without the purpose of war. So why was it just like they just kind of threw that, like slipped that in there, pretended I wouldn't notice that they just all of a sudden are talking about weapons. Hello? Okay, but but so they start talking about a pure fusion weapon that Libby can use to bring herself to the future. Like that's enough energy output to bring her to the future. I looked it up, pure fusion weapons. You know, they're real. Oh, not real. They're like hypothetical. They could exist one day in the future. And actually, the Wikipedia article said that there wasn't as much, or there wasn't radiation caused by them, because I guess in a regular nuclear bomb, they have like nuclear fission and then nuclear fusion. And so fission and then fusion, so like the particle splits, particle comes back together, and that's where the energy is. But it requires a lot of heat, it requires like certain conditions. So if you can just do fusion, it is a more efficient, something like that. I don't know, because you don't have all the energy lost to heat in fission, is what I understand. Maybe not exactly correct. But you know, the book's not gonna bother to fucking tell you, so like that's as much of an explanation as you can get, and it's from straight off my head. So I hope you weren't I hope you weren't expecting a genuine scientific explanation for a pure fusion weapon or any of the other science that gets brought up. This came out of nowhere. The fact that like this weapon had already been detonated, so like it's going to happen. In Libby's point of view, this is in the future, but in the present point of view, this is in the past. So like this is going to happen. It is a set event within the laws of time travel that the book establishes for us. It's not something you can change. Like you can't change the past. And so Tristan, using his, like, Nico tries to kill him again, and Tristan does basically exactly this scene is all pretty much like exactly what happens in the movie Batman vs Superman, where the Flash like comes out of nowhere from the future and is trying to tell Batman something, but he like miscalculated. I know that's not a movie that gets referenced a whole lot anymore and that people didn't like it, but it, like, beat for beat, exactly that scene. That's exactly what happens in this scene, is that Tristan like pops out of nowhere. He's like, Libby, I know how to get you back. You just have to detonate a nuclear bomb. And he tells her like nobody's killed in the blast, and it's already happened. So like for us, like it's already happened. It's going to happen. And so Libby and Belen see this, and Tristan disappeared. Belinda's like, what the fuck was that all about? What's going on? So Libby has to tell her that, you know, I'm from the future. Sorry, I've been lying to you this whole time. And Belinda's obviously upset about this, understandably, because she's given up her whole life for Libby. Like, everything in this past year has been like for this research project. She's been trusting Libby with this research project. She's let other opportunities pass her by because she thinks that once this research is published, like that will make up for it, that she'll be able to better the world, and like that will be a worthy sacrifice. Like her life that she could have been, everything she could have been doing in that time is an understandable, like acceptable loss for the benefit of the research that Libby has been doing. And so like she misses her grandma's funeral, and she fails the class that Libby convinces her to take, and she's like let all these research and internships pass her by because she's with Libby, like she's doing this research with Libby, and she thinks it'll all be worth it. But the research doesn't exist. It just like doesn't exist. So Libby has effectively like ruined this girl's life. Like she has nothing. She has nothing to her name. and like that's on Libby. And so Belen's obviously like upset with this. She's like, you can't detonate a nuclear bomb. Are you crazy? And Libby's like, yeah, I know. Like, I'm obviously not gonna do that. But then a little bit later, Belinda's like, no, I saw the way that you were talking to Tristan. You are gonna do it. Because, like, as soon as he told you that this had already happened, that the nuclear bomb did get detonated, I saw you, like, convince yourself to do it. Which is, like, fun. We get this fun little paradox where, like, maybe possibly the paradox from the title. Like, Libby decides that she is going to do this because she's already done it. Because in the present, it's already done. So she's like, well, I can do it, I guess. But I feel like she doesn't wrestle with this enough. Because, like, she kind of sits there and she's like, oh, man, Tristan did say nobody would get killed. He didn't say nobody would die. So, like, that kind of implies that some people are gonna die in the fallout, in the radiation, in the, like, damages that are done. It just won't be immediate. It'll be like a slow death of, like, leukemia or something caused by what I did. And I know that I said that pure fusion reactions don't generate radiation, which I think is what the Wikipedia page said, but the book treats it like there will be radiation. Like, the book says, I think it's Nico who says something about, like, fallout. He's like, there will be fallout. People will die because of this. Lots of people will die because of this. And so Libby, like, thinks about that, and is like, okay, fine. And that's, I don't know, I feel like we should have seen her wrestle with this a little bit more. Like, maybe she finds out about this in the beginning of the book, so that by the end, she's had to kind of, like, convince herself that she deserves to go home, that, like, her life is more important than all the other people who are going to die because of her. That she's had to, like, deal with the fact that, like, she will be responsible for killing these people, which is something that she didn't want to be responsible for last book. So, like, it is a significant change in her character, and it happens so quickly. And, like, I don't know, it just seems like something that we should have spent more time on, something that should have been developed a little bit more. I think, again, I know I said Callum could have had a character arc this book, Libby could have had a character arc this book, going from, like, the very, like, good girl, doesn't want to hurt anybody, to the end where she's like, no, I deserve to go home. I want to go home. I have the means to go home. I want to beat up my boyfriend. I want to be in the Alexandrian Society, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to kill these people, and I'm going to be okay with it. And that would have been, like, such a powerful character arc, such a, like, strong contrast in her character. Especially since so many of the other initiates, of the other characters, especially like Nico and Tristan, really revere Libby as, like, the moral one, like the good one. And then she decides that she's going to kill these people at the end. Like, I think that would have been so strong if it was just, like, developed. Like, it's such a cool idea. It just happens so fast. She uses the nuclear fission. Nope. She uses the fusion weapon. She pops into the future, which is actually the present. And that's it. Oh, okay. There actually is something that I messed up. Belen, we get to the future before the ending, which is when Libby gets back to the present. We meet up with Ezra a little bit again, and he's talking to one of the members of the forum, and we discover that it is Belen, and she has been, like, biding her time this entire time. She was approached by Ezra, and she knew exactly who he was because Libby had talked about him, but she hates Libby because Libby, like, ruined her life, and, like, gave her all this false hope. And so she's, like, vindictive and angry, so she joins up with Ezra. She's gonna be a part of the forum. She's been there this whole time. She's waiting for Libby to come back. And I love that. I love that, but I also think it's so sad for I don't know, it's like, it's a very tragic story that like her whole life, her whole adult life has just been like trying to get back at Libby. Like, I feel like eventually you gotta let it go. Obviously, like, Libby did some pretty bad things to her, but like, I don't know, it's just a lot. It was a lot. I don't know. It was a lot. We also, like, whenever Ezra is doing his narration, he's like, I don't know, he's like talking about how he is starting to feel guilty, like he's starting to have regret about what he did. He like regrets that he ruined everything he built with Libby, and he's sad because like she loved him and he betrayed her. And I just did not, like, I did not understand that he was in love with her in the first book. Like, I really did think that he just got with her in order to get close to the Alexandrian Society, like knowing that she was going to be somebody the Alexandrian Society was interested in, that he got with her wanting to kind of have an in with that, wanting to like get close to that so he could destroy the Alexandrian Society. I never once thought he actually liked her. So now we're trying to pretend that he's liked her this whole time. Also, I think that he's kind of an idiot because if you have the power of time travel, he can, like, that's so OP. And if, okay, so Libby breaks out of her like jail because she like uses her magic. Can't Ezra just time travel to like a minute before that, stop her, and then like keep doing that forever essentially? Like, can't he always prevent her from doing that if he just time travels to before she did that? I don't know if that made sense, but like if she breaks out at 3 p.m., can't he just time travel to 2:30 p.m. and stop her before it even happens? And can't he just keep doing that indefinitely? Anyway, but that's where the book ends. Libby is back in the present. They're fighting Ezra. I think that's it. I think that's like the most significant parts of it. Anyway, let's talk about my overarching criticisms, like the problems that I had with the whole book, as well as my overarching yays. So my biggest, well, I have a couple big ones, so I don't really want to put them in any kind of order. One of my biggest critiques, I think I've kind of talked about throughout this video, has been like the pacing. Like, I don't think that there should have been a time skip. I don't think that the initiation thing should have taken so long. I don't think that like it felt very aimless for a lot of it. Like, we didn't have a sense of direction. And for book 2 in a series, like, we gotta know where we're going, you know? Who's flying this plane? Where are we going? So pacing was an issue for me. But I think kind of related to that, another issue that I had is that I just don't know what's going on. Like, there's too many unknown things too late in the series. We don't know who Atlas is or what he wants. We don't know the nature of the archives or why. I didn't even mention this, but the archives at some point like reject Reina's requests for books. We don't know why they do that. We don't know like why any of the characters are doing this. Like, if they're I think that what should happen is that their research should kind of all come together and contribute to the main plot. If that's gonna happen, we haven't seen it yet. So it just feels like very directionless. Like, I kind of feel like the author is trying to do a lot of different things that aren't connecting. Like, Parisa and Dalton are in their own world. I don't know what the hell they're doing. Callum and Reina are doing their own thing. Like, Reina's wanting to be a god, or like convincing herself that she's god, completely detached from Nico and Tristan time travel, like so far removed from that. Libby, like, how are any of these things related? Why are they in the same book? Like, is the wormhole important? Because the wormhole gets brought up like 2 times this book, and apparently it's just been there this whole time. So is time travel important? Is religion important? Is Reina's belief that she is a god important? Is Atlas important? Is Dalton important? Where are we going with any of this? I just thought of another thing for Reina, but I forgot what it is now. Oh, yeah. Reina's justification for believing that she's a god is that she can create life, which I like, because whenever I was taking classics classes in college, one of the things we talked about how gods are beings of life. So whenever gods have affairs with mortals, with people, there's always a baby that is the result of that, because gods are creatures of life. Gods create life. It's not really like a choice, like they always create life. So if Zeus gets with some human woman, there's going to be a baby. So like I do see that logic of her saying like, I'm a creator of life, that makes me God. But I see the logic, but I don't see how it connects to her. Because she has never at this point created spontaneous life. Like, she's never made a plant from nothing. She's never made a new species of plant. And if the only qualification to be a god is to be a creator of life, wouldn't that mean that all women are god? Because like every woman has the capability to create and grow new life. So how is Reina different from every other woman? I think that something that should happen is that Reina creates a new species, or she creates life spontaneously, and that leads her to the belief that she is a god. But we haven't seen her do that, so I don't really know how she makes that connection. But yeah, so we don't know where we're going. Like, nobody is captaining this ship. Where the fuck are we going? There's no coastline in sight. We're just on the open ocean. Like, nobody knows where we're going. There's no breeze. We're stuck. We're stranded. Obviously, my other like smaller critiques are that we still don't really have that many meaningful relationships between characters. I think that we have more at the end of this book, but definitely not enough for this being 2 complete books. Definitely not enough character relationship. Another critique is that Parisa just like never has anything to do. Like, she's never doing anything interesting, and it makes her really boring, and like all she's ever doing is like being sexualized. Can she do something? Maybe? I don't know how Gideon fits into any of this. I like Gideon as a character. I like him. I like his dream magic. How does it fit into the plot? Why is he in this book? Who is he? What's he up to? Like, I don't get it. How does he fit into everything else? But the things that I enjoyed about this book, I liked Reina going off the deep end. I liked Reina and Callum coming together. I liked the development of Tristan and Nico's relationship and like their friendship, their different research ideas or like powers coming together was interesting, and it like kind of gave a minute sense of like he gave us some form of direction. I liked Gideon. I liked how his powers were explained. I liked yeah, I guess that's it. Some changes that I would make to this book. I think that this book needs to be restructured. I think that this book should focus on the research element of them being in the Alexandrian Society. So like, I think that the entire book, every character should be working on their research project and then have to defend their thesis at the end. I think that would just be like kind of fun. But I also recognize that like these research projects are probably going to be longer than a year. Like the stuff that Reina's talking about, this is like lifelong work. She's talking about multiple civilizations, multiple religions, like all this stuff that's going to take her like years to research. So I think all that kind of stuff should get a lot more development. Maybe like that's the main focus, like our main plot line. And then at the end of it, maybe instead of defending their thesis, they have to like present their research so far. And then that can kind of show us how all the research is going together. I do think all the research should kind of go together. And maybe it will eventually, but again, this is book 2. Like, we've been in it for 800 or 900 pages. Like, we gotta get moving. Something has to happen. Also, they're like getting kicked out of the house after a year of research. Like, they give their research to the archives and they're kicked out. Hello? Does the archives even want their research done by these like novice independent researchers? Like, if I was the Library of Alexandria, I would not want this fucking like chicken scratch. I would not want it. I like that the archives is starting to like take on a personality, almost like the library itself is kind of given character traits. Like, it rejects Reina, it like kind of interacts with the characters almost. So I like that it's kind of seems like there might be something going on with it. Like, it has some kind of sentience, it has some kind of awareness. I think that's super fun, and I would have loved to see more of it. You know what? I think I'm done here. I think that's where I gotta stop. Yeah. So this was The Atlas Paradox by Libby Blake. Will I be reading the 3rd book when it comes out? I saw what it was called, but now I'm forgetting. The Atlas Complex. I have to ask the question. Will I be reading The Atlas Complex when it comes out? I just don't know. I wouldn't have told myself that I was gonna read this book. But here I am reading it. 2024. I don't know what the future holds for me and Olivia Blake. I do genuinely think that Olivia Blake has a lot of really interesting ideas, a lot of really cool concepts that do show up in these books, but she kind of either abandons them or makes them more convoluted than they need to be. And so like they get introduced and they're super interesting and then they're gone. You know, they don't exist anymore. And that's really frustrating because it's like, I would have liked to see this and it's gone now. I'm done. This is all I have to say about The Atlas Paradox. That's it. And I have to go. I really do have to go. I have to leave it be. I have to let this out of my brain and be done with it. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.